from the shores of beautiful Lake Coeur d'Alene in the heart of North Idaho. Local, regional, national, and international guests discuss their topics on our forum, the North Idaho College Public Forum, with your host and moderator, political scientist, Tony Stewart.
Today we wish to complete a two-part series dealing with certain issues of human rights. We have our two same guests back from last week. I thought last week's program was of great substance and importance. Our guests discussed a trip they'd taken to Washington, D.C. to the U.S. Justice Department to meet with people from all 50 states to talk about how to live together in harmony. They also visited the Holocaust Museum, which we also discussed last week, and how important it is to remember that terrible tragedy so that it is not repeated ever again in history. Our guests today are going to discuss the Northwest and some human rights organizations that have been around for some years and how we, from community to community, address our living together under a democratic system with equality. I welcome back to the program, first of all, Marshall Mann, who owns a real estate firm in Kootenai County, Idaho. He's one of the founding board members of the Kootenai County Task Force on Human Relations. He also serves as a member of the Idaho Advisory Committee to the United States Civil Rights Commission. Marshall, you have spent many years of your life working on behalf of all people and their rights, and we commend you and welcome you back to our program.
Thank you. It's great to be here again, Tony.
And I'm equally so pleased to have Skip Cook with us. Skip, like Marshall Mann, has spent many years of her life working for the dignity and equality of all people here in the Pacific Northwest. She is a former board member of the Kootenai County Task Force on Human Relations. She presently represents the Human Rights Task Force in the state of Idaho on the board of directors of the Northwest Coalition Against Malicious Harassment, which is headquartered in Seattle, Washington. Skip also works very much with the schools and particularly with exchange students from around the world that live in North Idaho for a year. Skip, it's a delight to have you on the program.
Thank you.
And as always, I'm so pleased to have Janelle Burke, our regular panelist, with me again today, who is an attorney in the state of Idaho, and it's always traditional. Janelle will commence today's questioning.
Well, it's going to be fun to visit with you again. We had a great time visiting previously with regard to this subject, and so I want to talk a little bit about the local communities. In most of our communities, we have a number of organizations. We have service clubs. We quite often have organizations that are related to churches and so forth. But human rights organizations are a specific kind of organization, and I think perhaps most often are denominated as task forces. Can you tell us, Marshall, what is the purpose of these kinds of organizations? What function do they serve in a community that's different than some of the other organizations within our communities?
Well, I think basically the main purpose is to stand up against racism and bigotry when it pops its ugly head. And that's what we've been doing. It's something we wish we didn't have to do. It's not something we really even want to do. I know for me, I do not want to be involved in a human rights organization, ever. I am, because we have to be. And it's too bad we have to be. We shouldn't have to be. This is a great community that we live in. It's a great area. And there's a few people in this area that have tainted our area and given us a reputation that we do not deserve. And if we don't stand up and say something, we will become that kind of community.
So you see the purpose and the function as being a standing up, and that you have a specific duty, if you will, to do that, which is different than just serving the community in another way.
That's just one of the things that we need to do. Also, when there's somebody is being victimized, yes, as a victim of prejudice and bigotry, it's real lonely out there when you are a victim, especially if you're a person of color or if you're a minority in the area and you think that nobody cares about you. This organization cares, and we're out there to give victim support to people that are affected in that way. Sorry.
Keep going. You're telling us a number
am I
of
saying
purposes.
too much?
No.
Another area that is real important is education. And education is where, that's the future. And that's where we're going. And hopefully we can go to the future, celebrating diversity instead of fearing the differences in people.
And Skip, task forces at the local level, and then perhaps coalitions of task forces. And can you explain how the two sort of fit together in a bigger area?
Right. We are still developing local community grassroots organizations to deal with racism and bigotry, and also teach tolerance, educate our communities, which is a very large part of what we do. I think Idaho is rather unique in the United States in that we have a grassroots human rights task force in almost every county from central Idaho to the north. There's one county I haven't gotten to yet, but we're going to do it because there's folks up there that want to start one. And I would like to invite other people from other areas to think about their part of the world, and if they have a grassroots human rights task force in every one of their counties. People give a great deal of time and energy. We are concerned about local elections and who is running for office and what their reasons are for running for office so that constitutionalists and racists don't slip in. We are very concerned with our young people in starting human rights clubs in our high schools. Right now we have several going very, very well in the North Idaho area. So there are young people also who are seeing this as an important part of their life.
I would think, Marshall, that one of your other purposes in your organizations, and Skip too, would be review of legislation, proposed legislation and that sort of thing, so that the laws that are presently on the books and those that are being proposed are ones that are favorable to civil rights.
The Kootenai County Task Force was very instrumental, and Tony Stewart was very instrumental in helping get a lot of this legislation passed. But in the early 80s, we passed the malicious harassment law, and at that time, that was the toughest malicious harassment law in the country. And today, I think it's still one of the toughest ones, if not the toughest one. And we had a lot of help in drafting that legislation. Glenn Walker, who at that time was our prosecuting attorney in Kootenai County, helped draft that legislation. And it was some great legislation. And we did some great work getting that through our legislature, which was kind of tough because it was a problem here. It wasn't a problem down south. And North Idaho, to get something like that passed in southern Idaho is a real challenge. But there were some people who came to the forefront on that. Louise Shattuck was one that helped. Bill Wasmuth was one that was active. Norm Gissel, Tony Stewart, and there were many others. Larry Broadbent that really worked hard to get that legislation passed. And that was just the first step.
Skip, one of your great contributions in life in your heart is in education. And you love young people and you want to help direct them in a positive direction. I have some materials that Marshall brought, and I'm going to have both of you to share in these, but I'm going to ask you first. I know you've been very high on and very positive about the Southern Poverty Law Center in Alabama's work in teaching tolerance, and I'm going to show on the screen one of the magazines, and if you'd share with the audience what this program's about, and it's available to school districts across the United States. We'd appreciate if you would do that.
It is. Our school districts in North Idaho are not the wealthiest by any means. We are lucky if we can keep a roof over our heads. So going out and spending a lot of money on teaching diversity is not something we're quite there at this point. The Southern Poverty Law Center provides incredible materials for teachers to use in the classroom, and it's free. Not only the Teaching Tolerance magazine with lots of ideas for teachers on programs and ideas that have been used and have been very successful in the classroom, but also they have produced several videos that are also free to educators by request on school stationery, one to a school. And they make it much easier for us to be teaching tolerance. Our local library in Coeur d'Alene, with the Rayo Wallenberg Award money that the city of Coeur d'Alene received, has an incredible collection of books that teachers can use. Teachers from all over have come in there and use the books in the classroom. So it's been very affirmative.
And I want to expand this because I want to take advantage of your position to tell this story. The Northwest Coalition serves 6 states: Colorado and Oregon and Washington, Idaho, Montana, Wyoming. And in doing that, your organization serves in the field of education. Could you share this a little bit with us of some things in addition to teaching tolerance that's nationwide with the Southern Part Law Center, some of the programs of the coalition that's in the schools across the Northwest?
We had a subcommittee that worked for about 3 years to put together a booklet on Antibias Curriculum, which is free to educators. We took this job very seriously and reviewed great mountains of material and came up with some that we thought were very feasible and would create the most positive effect in the schools. So that by contacting the Northwest Coalition, educators can get our Anti-Bias Curriculum Guide with list of books available and videos that they might want to use in their classrooms. We have just written a grant that we don't quite know yet if we're going to get or not. With the grant money, we would bring high school students throughout the whole northern counties of Idaho together for a full day of workshops. And this would give young people an opportunity to talk about what they are doing in their human rights clubs in the school and share ideas. It also would give the school advisors an opportunity to talk together and discuss what is working in their school and sharing ideas, as well as bringing in some experts to actually present in different workshops. So we're hoping that comes about.
Along that line, it's not the coalition, but they're all working together. The Kootenai County Task Force on Human Relations, along with the lecture series at North Idaho College and the Spokesman Review, this May will be the 3rd annual gathering of high school students all over North Idaho at North Idaho College to deal with the issue of racism. And we have a General Assembly, and then they break out into sessions, and both of you have been leaders of those breakout sessions. And so this year it looks like a national spokesperson will be coming in to help lead that. So all these different organizations are doing this, what you're talking about in the Northwest. Marshall, I'd like for you to share some too. I want to commend you, as I did Skip. She is very dedicated in the field of education. You are a salesperson, not only in the field of real estate, but you sell the idea of civil rights, and you're very good at it. And in the Kootenai County Task Force, that's been one of your endeavors. Would you talk a little bit about how one can, as an organization, reach out to the public, the media, that there are certain mediums that can be used to send the message of human rights? And the first one I want you to talk about is the poster that you really the one that urged this, and you got certain people to come up with the design. But I will show this to our viewers, and this appears in many businesses and homes throughout North Idaho. Would you talk about this and some other issues?
You betcha. And that's available to anybody who would like it. They could call me at my office, and we'd be happy to get them one of those, and they're at no charge. They can reach me at 772-6634, and it's 208's the area code if they're not in Idaho. And that poster is, we need to sell our community for what it really is. We're getting beat up in the media as being a haven for white supremacists, a haven for racists, and it's the farthest thing from the truth. We have very few racists in our community. We have some, and we have some real high-profile ones, and that's where the reputation is coming from. So we have to resell our community for what it really is and what Idaho is really all about. And Idaho is an area for everybody, and regardless of race, color, or creed.
Would you share some other things other than the poster? There's a lot of other avenues that have been used to encourage the public to come forth with their support of human rights, other than the poster. One of the things that comes to my mind is that as a member of Idaho's Real Estate Association, you have done some work there, that they use a certain logo and so forth.
Absolutely. We had a logo that was
Skip
originated when we started the task force, and it was our original task force logo. It was adopted.
Still is.
It still is our original. That's right. It still is our task force, and it's five or six different faces, different ethnic people. And it was, for a long time, our logo for the Coeur d'Alene Association of Realtors. It was adopted by the Idaho State Association of Realtors as their logo. We had billboards all over the state with that logo on it. And basically it said, Idaho is for everyone. And Idaho is for everyone.
Another thing that you were responsible for, I'm just trying to get out some different examples. Some years ago, you were able to bring radio spots that were aired from the Anti-Defamation League, and I recall the one with the child that was so powerful, and so would you share that as another avenue?
Not only did we bring some radio spots, but we also brought some TV spots, and that the radio stations and TV stations ran for us at no cost as public service announcements, and they were very moving, a lot of them, and some of them were with some heavy-duty entertainers. We had Mr. Bigot himself, Archie Bunker, was one of the people who really isn't a bigot.
The real person there is a human rights advocate, not Archie Bunker, but O'Connor that played him. Yeah. Carol
O'Connor, right.
One of them, before we go back to our panel member, I also have here something called 10 Ways to Fight Hate. Would you share this?
That's a new magazine that was put out by the Southern Poverty Law Center. And teaching, and they have, the Southern Poverty Law Center has two divisions. They have teaching tolerance, which is to educate young people, and the other end is fighting racist organizations, and we're doing that right now in our area, and that's real exciting, and maybe we can talk about that a little bit. But on the teaching tolerance side, the 10 Ways to Fight Hate is with the hate crimes that have been happening in our schools, and to prevent those from happening even before they happen. And that is available for free to any organization, any school, or really any organization really that would like to get it. All they'd have to do is send to send a teaching tolerance at the Southern Poverty Law Center, 400 Washington Avenue in Montgomery, Alabama. Zip code 36104. And if you didn't catch it off the show, give me a call, give Tony Stewart a call. We'll be happy to get the information for you on that. I want to talk a little bit about those videos that Skip was talking about, because Skip kind of touched on them a little bit, but those videos are set up for classroom size. They're about 40 minutes classroom time. They're about 40 minutes apiece. And they were all three nominated for Academy Awards. Two of them I know for sure won Academy Awards. These are really high quality. The first one they did was called, I believe, The Struggle, and it's about the Martin Luther King days, the 60s, and the civil rights movement. Okay. The second one they did is about racism and bigotry in the United States from the time of Columbus to today. And it goes through the witches in Salem, the witch hunts in Salem, and it just goes all the way through that. They're very moving videos, and they're great for kids. Now, these are more for high school kids, maybe junior high school kids, but then they had a new one that they came out with. The last one is Starting Small, and that's for young kids in grammar school, and that's where we need to start. We need to start young and keep it going all the way through.
Well, I was going to mention one other thing to Skip, and I will, because it brought to my mind, I want to recognize how all these mediums are used to be effective. The Anti-Defamation League of B'nai B'rith has a seat on the Northwest Coalition. You work close with them. And out of the Seattle office and in the state of Washington, and I think probably nationally we're involved, they spend a lot of money on a program that's been very effective in the schools in the Seattle area, A World of Difference, I believe. Would you like to share that with us, Skip?
Yes, they put out excellent materials. They will go into a school district and train the teachers. It's quite an extensive training, and then they have the materials that are actually needed to teach diversity in the classroom available to the classrooms also. So that's a very old and very well-respected program, World of Difference. Also wanted to mention too, Tony, when we were talking about young people and activities here in our area, we can't forget Camp Peace, right, which has been so successful. Actually, the high school students who came to the first retreat, it's a weekend retreat on learning diversity and being comfortable with who they are and who they're with. And the first group of students named the camp, People Everywhere Are Created Equal. And it's being financed through the Kootenai County Task Force on Human Relations and the Spokane Ecumenical Council. And it's been so popular bringing students from Spokane and North Idaho together that we went from having it once in a spring to now twice a year in the spring and in the fall. And we keep looking for larger and larger camps. And
we might add that it's both Spokane and Kootenai County students, certain high schools, and they rotate those from year to year.
Right, and even branching out into other counties, sure, up in Sandpoint and Bonners Ferry and even Central Washington.
And we should indicate it started in 1990, and a very special person, Jeannie DeLong, heard about it in Baltimore, Maryland, and brought the idea here. One other little footnote, and then we must go back to Janelle. You'll be happy to know that the new organization called the Human Rights Education Foundation, which is part of the task force, the 501c3, has met, and they have made as part of their budget for next year to even be more generous to that camp. Janelle Berg.
Many of us are not involved directly with the task force, but when certain things come up in the community, we don't know exactly how to react. What is the proper way to react? And I want to get some of you who are real experts in this. What is the proper way to react to marches, to demonstrations, to those kinds of things, or even to someone who is being unkind in a store or making unkind remarks? And let's start with Marshall, and I hope, Skip, that you'll just kind of chime in and make this an answer that both of you will respond to. But what is the appropriate way really to respond to some of these kinds of high-profile activities?
I talked to some of the high-profile. Let's talk about some of the low-profile.
Let's talk about low-profile. Okay. That's good.
I had the privilege of speaking to Lake City High School leadership class just this last Monday, and they instead of talking a lot, I did a lot of asking questions, and I let them do most of the talking, which is kind of unusual for me, but was a change. One of the things I asked is, that things that we can do, to make this a better place and to be more sensitive in the area of human rights. And somebody came up with ethnic jokes. When somebody tells an ethnic joke, what should we do when we tell an ethnic joke? And one person says that, in fact, it was a student teacher that brought this up, Stacy Becker. And Stacy said that when somebody tells an ethnic joke, she just doesn't participate anymore. She doesn't laugh. Even if it's funny, she will refrain from laughing, and she will tell the person that that's not really acceptable type of humor if it's putting down a group of people or or a person really. And she said, it's really a small thing to do something like that, but it's my way of doing my part. And I said, Stacy, you're absolutely wrong. It is not a small thing to do. It is a big thing to do, because that is real important. It's a hard thing to do, to tell your friends or to tell the people you're with something like that. But it's real important, because it's those little things that make the big difference in a community. Because when people get put down and they feel bad, they don't want to come here, and they don't want to live here, and they don't want to be here. And we got to quit putting people down, and we have to start putting them up.
It's encouraging, too, your children to bring home ethnic children from school, include them in as their playmates. In North Idaho, we have a growing Hispanic community. We have a strong Native American community.
We have an immigrant community.
And we have a strong immigrant community, particularly people from the former Soviet countries here. And encouraging children to meet and mingle and be friends with people from different religions and different communities in general. And we need to do that, start that by showing examples and broadening our own spectrum of friends and reaching out to other people. And it becomes a much more joyous life for most of us if we add diversity into it.
And how do we respond to the high profile?
The high profile things. Okay, let's talk about the high profile. I think you respond in the way you feel that you should respond. As a task force, we made a decision a long time ago that we were never going to go out and confront, and we're not going to work on their agenda. We're going to work on our agenda. And basically, we're going to do our events when we want to do our events, and that was the way. We were not going to be reactive. We were going to be proactive, and that's the way we've been. But some people need to be reactive, and there are people out there, and you have to do what's in your heart. And if you feel you need to stand up to something, like when they had the march downtown, there were people that felt very strong about being down at that march. It would have been great if nobody showed up, but that's not the case, and people did show up. And
I'm sorry to interrupt you. The clock went down on this show. I wish we had more time. I thank both of you so much for being here. It's been 2 very important weeks, and I commend both of you for all the work you do, and you've been just excellent guests, and we thank you so much. And I know Janelle joins me in saying that last week we talked about your trip to Washington, D.C. and the Holocaust, and now we've been talking about the organizations up Northwest, and you've been very clear about the kind of things we can do, and we thank you both very much. Ladies and gentlemen, we are now completing a 2-week series in which we've talked with our guests about first nationwide issues and human rights and getting together, and then we've been spending this week to talk about what's happened here in the Northwest and how grassroots organizations are important on this question. I'd like to invite you to be with us again next week at this same time, and we'll change to another subject. Until then, please have a good week. I am Tony Stewart.
North Idaho College Public Forum is the longest-running public television show of its type in North America and is seen in 7 states and 2 Canadian provinces. Each episode is pre-recorded live and is an educational community outreach from North Idaho College. Please join us again at this same time next week for another new edition of North Idaho College Public Forum on this public television station.